One question. You excited to get back to soccer?
What about MLS Gone Wild? We have special guest with us, Jacori Hayes, joining us today from Minnesota. Just Slot, take it away.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another week of MLS Gone Wild. We have a really cool episode for you guys tonight. I think you're going to really like it. Blake, let's get it.
Yeah, guys, like both of them said, welcome to MLS Gone Wild. This is our 14th episode. We actually just hit our 1,000th listen on all of our episodes. So that's a big milestone for us. So we're super hyped about that. But let's get serious now. So in this episode, we're not going to be discussing any soccer, but rather we're going to be discussing something much more important. That being the recent murder of George Floyd, the protests across the country that have followed, and the Black Lives Matter movement. This discussion is going to feel uncomfortable at least for me personally, but it's a conversation that we need to have today. We need to have tomorrow. We need to have it next week. We need to have it next month. We need to have it next year. We need to have it until everything is changed, until there is justice and equality for every man, woman, and child in this country. So through our guest, Jacori, today, we seek to further educate ourselves, understand and support the Black men and women, or Black men, women, and children in our communities. Soccer is our passion, but equality and justice this week is our mission. So like they said, Jacori Hayes, our guest, Minnesota United FC, midfielder, alumni of Wake Forest University. Shout out to Hayden Partain for giving us this connection.
My boy Boogie.
Yeah. So Jacori, welcome, man. Tell our listeners a little bit about you, who you are, what you stand for.
Thanks for having me. Honored to be here. I grew up in Bowie, Maryland. Went to college at Wake Forest University, like you said, played there for 4 years, graduated in 3.5, and was drafted by FC Dallas at the beginning of 2017 and had 3 seasons there under 2 coaches, and was just traded to Minnesota United right before the preseason started off this year. So it's only been a couple months in this new home, but it's the year started off exciting, just a new change and new scenery, and hopefully a chance to better my career. And then coronavirus hit, and now we're dealing with another murder of a Black man, and it happened to be in Minneapolis. So it's a lot has happened in 2020, and it's a lot to digest for sure.
Yeah, like you said, you're new to the Minnesota area. With the murder of George Floyd happening in Minneapolis, that's pretty close to home, pretty close to your new home for you. So can you describe your feelings and thoughts on the murder of George Floyd, the protests that have followed across the United States, and the overall social injustice in America?
Yeah, that's a big question to tackle, a lot of parts to that. So the first part for George Floyd, watching the film or watching the video of his murder, it's haunting to see, someone's last moments, their last words. It's definitely not a comfortable video to watch, and I was kind of just lost and was just numb to it all, just like no feelings. Just because I've seen so many videos like that, even recently with Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia. It's a constant case that keeps happening, and it's hard to say, it's sad to say, but it won't be the last one. It's unfortunately, like, if things don't change and if we keep on this path, it will just repeat in a few months, another time. So yeah, just the thoughts in my head when I initially saw it was just like how repetitive this nature is, and how many people we've learned about, how many videos we've seen where we've seen people take their last breaths, or especially at the hands of police officers who are there to protect and serve. So it was very tough to watch that video. And then in terms of protests across the country, it's amazing the numbers of people that have come out to speak out against this, and there has been change. Even in the verdict on the officers have changed today, and that doesn't happen unless people are out there protesting and putting people's foot to the fire and demanding justice. Do we all wish it happened at the second we all saw the video. Of course, it doesn't take long for me to be like, all right, all 4 people should have been charged with something right from the get-go the second I saw the video. So it is disappointing that it took, even a week, lots of protests, riots. It took a lot for it to even reach this point, but it is a big milestone or a big step that they were even charged to begin with. And now it's about, just handling the process of, will they actually be punished by the court system? That's a whole nother issue, dealing with the reform of that. So that it's not like this is mission accomplished, or, we've solved everything and, this will never happen again. There's so many more steps that need to happen, but I guess that is a small victory today that, all 4 were charged.
So you spoke a little bit about, the protests. They did bring some change with the recent, upgrade in charges and the charges of the other 3 officers. With the case of Ahmaud Arbery, that took about 2 months to really surface once the video came out. So thank God for cell phones and, technology, so this thing could actually be put out to the media. So, a push could be made to get justice for Ahmaud and his family and everybody else that's been in a similar situation to that. So I have a question from one of my good friends. He sent it to me right before we got on here. And there's a little background to it. So like we were saying right now, unfortunately, George Floyd's murder by the police is not the first. It's not the last. Today, we're all from Columbus, but we're actually from a little suburb outside of Columbus, Reynoldsburg, Ohio. And for the first time in, I believe, probably our lifetime, we're all around the same age as you, Jacori. We saw a protest in Reynoldsburg, Ohio. Reynoldsburg, like I said, is a suburb outside of Columbus, but we've never seen a protest there. And there was a protest right down Main Street. My dad called me today. My dad actually went down and spoke to a police officer, which I thought was amazing. But this feels a little bit different from what we've seen on social media. We've seen police officers take a knee. We've seen police officers march. We've seen legitimate conversations happening. Does this one feel a little bit different to you?
Yes, it does feel different in terms of the number of engagements on social media. Everyone seems to be posting about it now, and there seems to be a lot of momentum being involved around this, the aftermath. And right now it's about just hoping this momentum sustains, and like thinking about this whole situation and talking with friends. It's like always the next question is, all right, so what do we do in a couple weeks? Because it's not like we can keep talking about this, or what, there's going to be at some point people are going to stop posting on Instagram. So what actions do people take in their day-to-day, week to week, to keep handling this issue? And so it's talking with my friends, it's tackling racism as a whole is a massive mountain, and it's not something one person can do by themselves. It's about every person doing the little micro changes, and staying in their lane, whatever that lane may be. Maybe it is protesting, maybe it is being out there, hitting the pavement, going to marches, or sometimes it looks like writing what's on your mind, passing around what organizations are doing good work in the community, enlightening other people, teaching other people. And so in talking with my friend, he's a teacher in South Texas, and he's, this upcoming year, he's going to be teaching AP US history. So this is a perfect opportunity for him to teach 20, 30 kids and show them the full history of US, the goods, the bad, turn them into advocates for social justice, and show them that this what can be changed in this country to have the liberty and the ideals for all, liberty and justice for all the citizens. So it's an opportunity for him to mold young kids in that direction. So that's his lane, and how to carry this momentum going. And then people like me, we can we have a platform, a little following on Instagram or on social media. We can post various organizations to keep people involved. Whatever books people are reading or books that I'm reading, you can post and, oh, here's what I learned today, or here's what I learned from this book. There's little things. Everyone has their own path. And, if we keep going down this path with everyone doing their little part, I think we can actually make a really big difference.
Jacori, so what do you think is going to be what do you think the next step in this process is going to be to abolish racism and to give justice to everybody?
Yeah, because it's a big issue that, it's been forming over 400 years since this country's inception. So it's not going to go away in a week. It's not going to go away in a month. So it's everyone doing their part, their little bit to, having these conversations, having tough conversations with family members, looking in the mirror and saying, what can I do to end it? And it's another thing. Am I doing enough as a Jacori Hayes, as a Black man that's playing professional soccer? Am I doing enough to end racism, or lift up other Black people and other minorities in the communities around me? Am I doing enough? And I think if everyone has those conversations and has those reflections, that then you actually have to act on it. Things can move in the right direction. And I don't want to belittle this. This won't be solved in a short period of time. It's going to take a lot of action to actually overcome something that's been a part of this country for a long time. But yeah, just making little steps every day or every week. Baby steps are still progress forward. So doing your little part, I think, will help.
And I feel like the government should speak a little bit more than what they have done so far, because I feel like they're kind of hiding behind the walls right now. They're not really speaking up on behalf of everybody with this movement. So I feel like if they're trying to if they're going to try to push the issue, then I feel like they should speak up a little bit more and give a little bit of hope in the government system for the people that actually want to push this to get solved and stuff like that. So I feel like they're kind of just hiding a little bit more than what they should.
Yeah, I mean, listening to, I don't want to go too much into the politics of it, because this shouldn't be like a political issue. This should just be, we're human beings. We're living in the U.S. We have rights, and the Constitution. We're all supposed to be equal underneath the Constitution. So it's not even like a politicized thing. But just listening to Trump, I think was yesterday or 2 days ago, he gave the talk at his speech, and he called the rioters and looters domestic terrorists, and I don't think he's ever called the police officer who did this a terrorist. That's he's never used those harsh words. When in Charlottesville, he never said that was an act of terrorism. So it's interesting the words he's using to condemn certain people. And like you said, it's not very unifying. It's not giving people much hope. And I think that's a way that people can, enact change, and it's getting out to vote. And even I think Barack Obama posted on his Instagram story, and maybe it was a tweet, but it's not just about the big national elections, and it's something that I'm guilty of as well. It's not about who's the president or the Senate races. It goes even smaller than that to your local state elections. And so that's something that I've opened my eyes to, and it's something that I need to be a part of. The whole political spectrum of voting for everything. Even in the local elections, there's a smaller amount of people that vote for that, so your vote's even more important and carries even more weight. So it's important to get out to vote. If you don't feel like the way things have been handled don't really inspire the hope and change that you're looking for, there's a way to change that. It's an active thing that you can do, and it's going out to vote. It's not some theoretical thing like, oh, I need to read 10 chapters. I need to read this book, and maybe I'll be enlightened. It's something actually you can physically do, and it makes a difference.
Yeah, I agree. And, the change doesn't start on a national government scale. It starts in your small locality. whether that be Reynoldsburg, Ohio, or whether that be Minneapolis. Ferguson, Missouri, there was a black man gunned down by a police officer there, I believe in like 2014. Off the top of my head, I'm sorry, I don't remember the name, but recently they did just elect their first African-American mayor, female African-American mayor. I just saw it on the news tonight, and since we were just talking about the subject, I thought that was important to bring up. So voting in your smaller elections for your mayors, your state representatives, that's huge because that's going to provide influence and provide a voice from directly where you live and your people's perspective within your community. So I think that is huge, is getting out to vote. It sounds simple, it almost sounds too simple, but like it can make a huge difference. And sometimes I feel like, people our age, we're all, caught up in starting our careers, and, we all love soccer. Jacori, you're playing professionally. We're all caught up in watching, whether it's EPL, MLS, or whatever. And just our everyday life that we don't really get to sit down and really go over our options and form opinions on these types of things. So I believe that having this conversation that we're having right now, and unfortunately the events that have happened, has offered us the opportunity to really think differently and think creatively about ways that we can, influence change within our communities.
Right. 100% agree.
Yeah. So just a question here, like you talked about people confronting their parents and kind of like getting the message out there. What would your advice to them be where like to get the message out or, but they don't really know where to start? Like, how do you help them? What is your message to them to give them a starting point to understand the whole, everything going on and like to get involved if they want to get involved or should get involved? But like, where do you ask them to start? Where's your suggestion for them to start?
Yeah, it's tough. It all starts I think from just educating yourself. Whether that's podcasts, reading books will help you, the base layer, like we said before. I said reading books isn't just enough. You have to have some action afterwards, but you have to have the knowledge to actually know what you're talking about and confront people, or have these conversations with people. You have to have a basis understanding. You can't just go in there blind and not knowing anything. So there's a lot of podcasts out there. A friend talked to me about the 1619 podcast that the New York Times did, that just kind of documents the history of this country, starting back in when the first slaves were brought over in 1619. I checked out the first 2 episodes recently, and I was just blown away by the amount that I learned in there. And you read authors, Ta-Nehisi Coates. So I personally love James Baldwin. There's plenty of authors out there. On my autobiography of Malcolm X, you can read that. There's plenty of resources out there to at least get a base layer understanding of that. And then, like you said, it might be uncomfortable to, confront the people that you love, you have like good relationships with, but hopefully the relationship's strong where you can have these difficult conversations. You can voice your opinion and challenge them on theirs, whether it's, to be honest, it shouldn't be the conversation shouldn't be about like questioning whether like a Black person should have like just basic rights that are, as seen, like I shouldn't have to like defend my humanity to you. But for some people, they don't see it that way. So you have to confront them and challenge them as such. And I understand these conversations are hard, but they're the tough ones that we need to have.
Yeah. And I liked you brought up James Baldwin, and I read your statement that Minnesota posted, and you had the James Baldwin quote at the end saying, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced." And I think that's really powerful. I thought that was really powerful because there are so many people sitting back and kind of being in a neutral position where we're not going to be able to change it if we have so many people kind of sitting back. And I thought that was kind of interesting because it kind of pushes you. It kind of like allows you to know, hey, I need to get in this before I see any change. Like me sitting back is not helping anything. Rather, it might even be making things worse a little bit.
Right. And I thought that quote perfectly summed up, just hope. It's it is a difficult mountain to climb to get over, to overcome all this, but it doesn't happen until people actually put in the work for it. And so, yes, it's a daunting task. It's a daunting challenge. It's a difficult conversation. It's a lot of little actions that need to happen. It might take a long time, but if you don't face it and confront it and, give it all, you'll never see the result that you truly want.
Yeah, and I thought that was good. I mean, and then we're talking about the message and stuff like that. Have you because this is like kind of a worldwide type of issue and things going on, have you kind of had like a different type of have you ever had any encounters with this type of thing? Have you ever been like kind of scared or walked on eggshells a little bit?
Yeah, I talked about it a little bit in the piece. There was a time on my campus at Wake Forest where, walking back onto campus, I was walking with a group of my roommates who were white, and I was the one asked to show my ID to prove that I go to the school and I can come back on campus. It's one of those, you kind of just it hits you, and then it's like, man, like, I guess that's the way life is. I guess, it shouldn't be like that. And I was upset later that night thinking about it, but in the moment, it was I didn't really know what to do. You just show your ID and try to keep moving, but it is a shocking thing. And then I talked about it as well, like eating a pizza with a couple friends in Chicago, in the suburbs of Chicago. And just randomly we were eating outside the pizza store, and a cop just asked me like who I was. Like, I don't even know that he said a name. I don't even know what the name was. And I was like, that's not me. And I had to show him my ID to actually confirm it to him. And I was, just shocked, very uncomfortable afterwards, especially other patrons of the restaurant were just staring at me, looking at me like, or like, I don't know if the looks were like, what are you, like, who are you then? Or like, I feel sorry for you. I don't know, like, whether they were sympathy looks or accusatory looks.
I'm Jacori Hayes, man. Y'all want an autograph? Come on, man.
Yeah,
What y'all looking at?
yeah, we could take a picture. But yeah, it was, and then like, of course, afterwards you think about it, it's like, man, like, that could have gone terribly south. Like, what happens if you just arrest me there? There was a recent video that surfaced that I saw the other day. Like, a guy was, he was saying like, yeah, you have the wrong guy, and they arrested him and then checked his ID, and they were like, oh yeah, you are the wrong guy. Like, sorry, go about your day. It's like, no, this isn't go about my day. This is, you wrongfully arrested me, like, off of what exactly? And so it's and of course, luckily the guy wasn't harmed. There wasn't any, physical harm, to say the least. There wasn't any physical harm, but these things, as we've seen on other videos and other, stories, sometimes end in in death, or you're locked up for a long time, because they mistake an identity, or they actually pin the case on you. So it's I was fortunate that it didn't lead to that. It didn't lead to any arrest, but it's a terrible thing.
Yeah, I think you touched on the video. I think I saw that same video. Like, the guy turned out to be like an FBI agent, and like he pulled the supervisor. The supervisor came out, and like the supervisor wasn't even going to take action against his officers, and the guy watched the whole entire thing happen right in front of him.
He was in complete denial. He was just like, oh, like, the guy was like, I could have been dead. He was like, but there is no one dead. And it's like, no, that's not the issue. Like, it's, that can't be allowed to be okay, because then it does lead to someone's death.
So we saw the same thing in George Floyd's murder, with police officers standing around and not taking any action, especially from the one specific camera view that I saw. Brandon was a military police officer. He's out of the military now, But Brandon, you shared something with us yesterday just about kind of what you were taught in a situation like that. What was that?
Yeah, so it's like we were taught that if you see something like wrong going on with your partner or like anybody in general that you work with, kind of pretty much correct them on the spot. Like all those cops could have at least thrown him off of George Floyd, or at least done something, tell him like, or just move his knee.
Yeah.
And like, because he was on the ground for way too long, he could have easily been put in the back of the cop car, a lot more easily than what they did. And literally, like, if it was me or anybody else, because I guarantee you, one of those cops in the back of his head had it. Oh, I know he's doing something wrong right now, but I'm just gonna let him go. Right, like, just not think about anything because I don't want to be that bad cop, correcting my partner. So they could have easily taken him off of him and said, and pushed him back. It was like, get off of him or something like that. So, and we were always told, like, if you see something wrong, correct it on the spot. Even if it's like escalated situation. Like get it done. That way nobody gets hurt or anything like that. So
and that should happen in every workplace, every home, every community across the United States and across the world. Really, if you see something wrong, say something. And if you see something that inherently wrong, you have to stop it, like right then and there. The police officers that were present for the whole George Floyd situation, the whole murder. To be honest with you, I think they're almost as guilty as the police officer that had his knee on his neck, if you ask me.
I view it the same. Same.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with that too, because they could have taken action. They could have stopped him from that.
Yeah,
so
one guy, he stood watch and kept people from trying to help. So it's I mean, they're 100% equally at fault.
Yeah, and that goes back to like what I said earlier, like silence is sometimes worse than actually doing something. So because silence, you're kind of just sitting back, letting it happen, but you might not be the one performing the action, but sitting there watching something wrong happen is just as bad as doing the action, in my opinion.
Right.
100%. So I'll go ahead and ask my question. We've talked about, since we were kind of just talking about the George Floyd murder and, the camera views that were used and the people that were standing there screaming at the police officers to get them to stop. That surfaced on social media. We also see, the agendas that are pushed on the national media, whether it be CNN or Fox News or what have you. So when reporting on, the George Floyd case, or the Black Lives Matter movement, or social injustice in general, or the protests, how do the roles of social media and the national media differ?
Yeah, I think so. The national media is just driven by sensationalism. They're gonna be the ones that post the burning buildings, the negative aspects. They have their own agendas that they run. Whether it's Fox News, like you said, CNN, MSNBC, they have their political skew, their political agenda that they want to run, and I think the social media has a strong impact to showcase day to day what's going on, what's happening on the ground. You're able to share daily updates of the Black Lives Matter movement. Acts of social injustice can be shared. Without social media, we wouldn't even know of a George Floyd. We wouldn't know of a lot of these various cases that happen daily across the country. So the advent of these social media platforms and being able to everyone has a camera phone, everyone can be like the news anchor of these stories. It's shown a lot, and it's not like I've seen this quote passed around, or these similar type posts. It's like racism isn't just like spiking up right now; it's just being recorded. And so social media has a big obligation or a big responsibility of being able for everyone to be able to share their story and show what's going on day to day, and they're able to do that. They're able to do that and effectively communicate what's going on to the rest of the world. Whereas the national media, they have their reasons behind it, or only things that make the news hour or something that gets people to watch it. It is, at the end of the day, entertainment. Even though it is supposed to be news and people are supposed to be updated and kept aware of what's going on around the country and the world, but at the end of the day, the news channels are ran as entertainment channels. So it has to be something that keeps people engaged, and unfortunately, that kind of muddies how effectively they can show what's going on day to day.
Yeah, and the national media, their content is driven towards a specific audience, so that they're based off their audience, they're driving their agenda to them. Our social media people behind the cameras, or people that are tweeting out, especially people behind the cameras at the protests and, with the Black Lives Matter movement, they're kind of our freelance reporters that are really showing you up close and personal what's happening. The national media hasn't done a very good job about showing the small successes that the protests have had thus far. In that, the police officers are taking a knee with the protesters, or the police officers are walking and marching with the protesters. You don't see that on national media, but on the social media, you see that constantly, and you see cops having, real conversations with the people that are protesting. Whereas, the national media wants to focus more on what time the curfew is, what streets they're blocking in downtown Manhattan, what stores were looted last night, showing the footage of people being, stomped out and beat up, and stores being looted.
Yeah, and it's and you see a lot of the channels there having debates whether looting is right, and that sort of thing, and it's it kind of puts you in the mindset of like, do they care more about the buildings or people's lives? Obviously, like, I don't condone the looting and everything, but people, I'm not going to tell people how to riot and protest. They're But I think it's a problem when these news channels are condemning the rioters and the looters harder than they're doing the social injustice that's happening. And I think it truly shows where their values are. And ultimately, they, like you said, they're there to entertain us, and it's a reflection of what our values are as well, because they're only doing that to fit their audience or talk about what their audience thinks. So it's if people are more upset about the looting than actual, the social injustice and police officers murdering Black men and unarmed Black men and women, can't forget that. Then their values are in the wrong place. They care more about buildings than human lives.
Yeah.
So one thing. Oh, hold on, just 1 second, Dakota. One thing that I did see on social media, I'm not sure if it's been on the national media, but George Floyd's daughter saying, "Dad changed the world." For me, I'm struggling with that, to be completely honest with you. While I agree that this has sparked the conversation, and hopefully somewhere down the line it sparked the change, I wish it didn't have to come at the expense of his life. It's come way too far. This needs to end. Like we stated earlier in the podcast, like it seems like it's a never-ending circle. But Weston McKinney and DeAndre Yedlin and a bunch of guys put out a video today. They said enough is enough, and that is exactly how I feel. I wish George Floyd's daughter didn't have to. It's a nice quote, and yes, he may change the world, but I wish it didn't have to come at the expense of his life. Like, enough is enough. We need to value every man's life, Black, white, Hispanic, whatever, man, woman, child. It doesn't matter. Enough is enough.
It's heartbreaking to see that, and she'll grow up without a dad. Yeah, it's heartbreaking to see it. I mean, that's all you can say, and you just hope this is the final straw. You just hope against hope that it doesn't happen again. And now is the time for all of us to look in the mirror and be the difference that we want to see.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So we touched on social media, and social media, like, everything gains more traction through social media nowadays than ever before. And a movement that was kind of started a while ago, but has really gained traction this time around is the Black Lives Movement. What is your kind of message to people looking to understand and help with this movement?
Yeah, the biggest thing is, so the common response to Black Lives Matter is that all lives matter. And so the thing with that, the two aren't mutually exclusive. It's not like saying Black Lives Matter is not negating that someone else's or everyone else's lives like don't matter. It's just stressing that right now it appears that the Black lives do not matter and don't carry much weight. And even if your argument is to say all lives matter, you can't say that without Black lives mattering too. So it's like all lives can't matter until Black lives matter. So it's when you hear that argument, it's just like almost like just covering your eyes, like, you know, ignoring the issue. It's like, you know, it's just a silencing technique. And just like, oh, like I'm in my bubble, I don't see what's happening, all lives matter to me. But, you know, right now clearly that's not the case in all of society. So yeah, that's the biggest thing I want to say with that message is, like, you know, saying that does not mean other people's lives, other people are not important or their lives don't matter. It's not saying that at all. It's just like, and I know you guys have seen probably the meme of the house on fire, and it's like, oh, all houses matter. They spray water on the house that's dry and, you know, or that's not on fire, and you're ignoring the one that is on fire. It's right now Black lives in this country don't seem to matter as much, and that's what we're calling attention to. It's not negating anyone else's life or anyone else's value.
So I think you've had a lot of really powerful quotes so far in this interview, Jacori. But I think that you just said something that really resonated and really, like I said, when we were seeking out this interview, we were seeking to be educated and understand a little bit better. So when you were just describing the Black Lives Matter movement, and you said all lives can't matter until Black lives matter, for me, that's the most powerful thing that you have said on this episode, and that has really hit home. And we will continue to share that message, and we're going to continue to support whatever way we can. So thank you for that quote. That is absolutely amazing, Jacori, and you're absolutely correct about that. You know, because of the social media, you know, exposing all of these things coming out, you know, you said it, you know, it seemed like Black lives don't matter. So we need them to matter. Everybody matters. And we need you guys, not like you just said, all lives can't matter until Black lives matter. Point blank, period. Great quote. Great quote. So Poopas, you want to go ahead and close us out with our last scripted question, man?
Yeah, so Jacori, so what action do you think the president needs to do to, you know, actually take control of this and help out, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement?
And let me add to that. And what characteristics would a leader need to embody and, you know, start change within the nation that they lead?
Yeah, there's a lot there. You know, in terms of what a leader should do, you know, he should, like we said earlier, you know, should unite the people and give people some sort of hope. Listen to the people that are, you know, feel disadvantaged and not heard by this country. You know, I think it was the Martin Luther King quote, as is like the riots are the language of the unheard. It's like people don't feel heard right now, and, you know, there's been countless names murdered by the police, and still that we still see it happening. So it's a leader should be listening to what the people are saying, give them some sort of hopes, give them some like something to look forward to in terms of, all right, we're changing this policy, we're going to enact this, we're going to do these things, and that's just not what I'm seeing right now during this time. During his speech the other day, he said he was going to protect peaceful protesters, and minutes before his speech, they shot tear gas and rubber bullets at the peaceful protesters. And at the end, it turns out he just wanted to do it so he could walk calmly over and do a photo op in front of a church. So there's many contradictory things in his actions and his words, and all for a photo op. And so there's a lot of things that he's not doing to inspire hope and lead us to a brighter future. And so, I think we can go on for hours about this, but right now it's not really looking too good from the leadership.
And I agree with that. Like, because I feel like the city and state governments need to take control first, because especially going through like their police, like a whole police station and stuff like that. Because I think that one guy had 18 complaints against him, or 8 complaints, something like that was kneeling. So I feel like it needs to come internal first and get those cops out of there that have all those complaints against them, and just pretty much clean house. So I think that's what they need to start doing too.
There was a podcast that the New York Times, The Daily, put out. I want to say it was earlier this week, maybe today's only Wednesday, so maybe like Monday or Tuesday. It's just a couple days ago. And they just talked about the difficulty in removing bad officers. They have internal review boards, so it's, police policing themselves. And right now that's, it doesn't seem like they're very willing to, kick their buddy off the team for, not behaving as they should, not performing in as high of a level as they should. And then they talked about, how hard it is to even convict the police officers once it happens, in terms of proving that without a shadow of a doubt that another officer in the same situation would react the same way. And you can't really look inside their mind and see how fearful they were in various moments. And they were also talked about fighting up against the police union that's around, and it's hard to, even if a new police chief wants to come in and clean house and say, the officer had, the previous counts against them, like if he wanted to be like, all right, that's no longer acceptable, but the police union can come back in and be like, hey, like, no, like in the past, the police officer only got suspension without pay or suspension with pay for that same type of crime. You can't go above and beyond that. They refer back to the precedent. So it's even difficult for a new police chief to come in and try to clean house and get rid of the quote unquote bad apples, or clean out the cops that don't follow his ideals. So yeah, it's a lot going on, and there's a lot of different barriers to try to overcome to, get the police force operating at a level that's, fair and competent, and to the high standard that they should be held at. There's just many layers to this onion,
Yeah, because I know it just amazes me because how quick those other 3 or 4 cops got fired, right after it happened. It's like they knew something. So it just, if they can make it that easy, then why can't you make the whole, the rest of the bad apples in there that easy to get rid of?
So Chris Rock, I saw on social media today, I don't know if the quote was from a long time ago, but he made an analogy between, police departments and airlines and pilots.
Yeah.
That
was
so
in his Tambourine stand-up comedy, I think 2 years ago.
Haven't seen it, but it was an amazing quote. And basically he said, there's not a lot of room for error in being a police officer, and there's not a lot of room for error in being, a pilot. You can't be a pilot, and, sometimes you land the plane safely and sometimes you don't. It's your responsibility to land the plane safely. Yeah. The same as it is the responsibility of a police officer to, keep the community safe.
100%. Some jobs you just can't be bad at. you can't land the plane 80% of the time. You got
Exactly. You got to land it safely every time. You have to keep your community safe every time. You have to use good judgment every time, regardless of race, regardless of gender.
Yeah, and it's a high standard. I mean, it's difficult, but that's the requirement.
Mm-hmm. So, Pupus, Dakota, do you guys have any more questions for Jacori off the record?
No, honestly, I don't. I appreciate everything like you've done for us on this show. Honestly, like it's, it brings a lot more to me too, understanding some things that are going on right now. Also, so I appreciate everything you've said, and like you've definitely made a big impact on, like especially after we release this episode, you're gonna definitely make a big impact on people too. So, and I appreciate everything you've done, and thank you for joining us today.
Cool. Thank you guys for having us. I just want to be able to use my platform to share what I've learned, what I still have to learn, and I'm not up here on a pedestal pointing down at everyone. I'm in the crowd trying to figure things out just as everyone else is, and I know I have to look in the mirror and see what more I can do myself. So I'm just happy I was given the opportunity from you guys to speak.
Yeah, and I just want to thank you again also. And I think this has really opened my eyes this whole week, but also just sitting down, talking to you and having this discussion with a group face to face, kind of, we're talking in the computers, but it's kind of face to face. And I mean, we're all being looked up to by somebody. I'm being looked up to by kids I work with in the summer, by my players. I'm being held to that high standard. Pupus has a kid, so he's getting looked up to by his kid. Blake, I know there's kids looking up to him as well. So if kids are looking up to us and we're not being activists about this or teaching them the right way to live life and to go about it, we're letting not only people down right now, but the future down as well. And we need to, like you said, look inside ourselves to really become better and to really take this to the next level and really keep fighting for this change.
Yeah, it starts with us making a difference internally within ourselves. And from that, then, advocating for those around you and spreading the word and spreading your knowledge. So I encourage all of us, myself, Jacori, Pupus, Dakota, continue to spread this knowledge and continue to spread this conversation. Jacori, if, people keep hitting you up for podcasts or people want to talk to you, man, you gave us so much insight today. We only reach a very limited amount of people. So, I encourage you to continue to speak up. It's going to make a difference. Your knowledge and your ability to speak was great. And I think you just need to keep continuing to use that voice to ignite change within, the Minnesota area and, the national, within our nation in general. So, Jacori, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming on here to allow us to use our platform and to give you a platform to reach other people that wouldn't have, generally heard this. So we appreciate that. And you, like we said in the very opening of it, we sought out to further educate ourselves, broaden our understanding, and figure out more ways that we could support this movement and support African Americans within our community. So we appreciate you coming on, man. Do you have any questions for us or any last words you want to leave us with?
No, I had a lot of fun talking to you guys tonight. This isn't an easy topic to talk about, but I'm glad we were able to, have a discussion and, bounce thoughts off and, hopefully others can gain some insight. And, this is just an introduction and, just the base layer, and hopefully we can keep building on this and, take down racism.
And honestly, we'd love to have you on another future show and actually just talk about soccer with you too. But, if you're down for that too.
Let's make it happen.
All right, sounds good to me too.
All right, cool, man. Yeah, Jacori, we'll stay in contact, man. Until the next time we talk to you, stay safe. Keep using that voice. This is MLS Gone Wild, Week 14, with guest Jacori Hayes of Minnesota United FC. Before we go ahead and sign out, I'm going to leave you guys with this quote that he gave us. All lives can't matter until Black Lives Matter. Y'all let that sink in. We'll catch you guys next week. Peace.